I was going to do this video last week after that brutal St. Louis game, but decided to, sit on it, gather my feelings. They had to follow that St. Louis game up against the best team in the league. Coyotes managed to win that one 7-3, probably their best game of the season. And then back to reality Tuesday night against the Florida Panthers. I have a lot of stats I want to say. I have a lot of things to say. I've never really done a video like this. I rarely, get into coaches or firing coaches. I never once said to fire Dave Tippett. I thought the roster he had was brutal, and John Chayka had some work to do, and he did it. And I guess that's where I stand today. The Arizona Coyotes, 4 games above NHL record 500. You know who else was above 500 by 4 games last season? The Arizona Coyotes. Just let that sink in. I'm sure we all remember the roster the team had last season. No skill whatsoever. No talent. Riddled with injuries. No Nick Schmaltz. No Dvorak. Chikrin and Jomerson and Demers out for pretty much half the season. And yeah, they finished 4 games above 500. 4 points below a playoff spot. Can you believe it? I don't even know if this team this year is going to finish 4 points out. But it is what it is. That's where we stand. It's depressing. It's miserable. It's bleak. So we just got to talk about talk. Goals per game, 2.55 last year, 2.69 this year. It was 2.61 before Saturday's game. I had to change my notes. So it was 2.55 last year, 2.61 this season. After that Saturday game, it bumped up to 2.69. So 1 game increased their goals per game by 0.08 points. Not good, obviously, when you have Taylor Hall and Phil Kessel on your team and a healthy Nick Schmaltz. Definitely not good. Their power play was 16.28% last season. This season, it's at 19.61. So a 3 percentage point increase. Not good at all. When you have Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel brought in specifically to increase your power play percentage. If it only increases by 3 percentage points, it's not getting done. And you have a healthy Nick Schmaltz. Someone told me, hey, 19 out of 16, that's a 20% increase. Yes, but going from 1% to 2% is also a 100% increase. So if that happened to a team, they wouldn't be celebrating for a 100% increase. They went from 1% to 2%. They went from 16% to 19%. So yeah, they can't score. I think we all know that. That's been basically the crux of this season. But for some reason, Tocchet did not get fired earlier in the year. I'm not saying for him to get fired this season. I mean, it's the end of the season already. We'll get into next season. But I mean, coaches that have been fired this year for less were Gerard Gallant, Bruce Boudreau, Peter Lavalette, and Mike Babcock. Mike Babcock had, he had his tribulations with the Leafs, but the new coach in Sheldon Keefe also has his tribulations with the Leafs as well. And Babcock was fired, and he had, I think, 3 years left in his contract. But those are like top tier coaches. I mean, Gerard Gallant won the Jack Adams last season, or in 2018, whichever year the award was given. So that's 2 seasons ago. And then, so a season and a half removed, he gets fired from Vegas. And Bruce Boudreau had the Minnesota Wild, clicking, and they're on a 7 wins, 2 loss run. And they were 4 points out of the playoff spot, and they fired Bruce Boudreau. Lavalette with the Natural Predators had a shaky start and just fired him after the GM said that Lavalette had his job safe. And Babcock, like I said, struggled out of the gate. No patience, and fired due to the Toronto media and all the hoopla over there. And Rick Tocchet, who was an all-star coach because Gerard Gallant got fired, manages to escape with a job, and his team went from first place to out of the playoff spot in about a 2-month span. The team has been awful and inconsistent since the Christmas break. I mean, I don't know what happened over Christmas, but it's been bad. They've lost 15 of their 21 games, so they've lost 15 of the last 21 games. Unacceptable for a playoff team. I mean, I don't know what excuse Tocchet gets to throw out. Sure, they had a Eastern road trip 2 weeks ago. They had a bunch of back-to-backs, especially last week with Dallas and St. Louis. But the comments he made after that St. Louis game really ticked me off. He said the team had no juice in that St. Louis game after a back-to-back with Dallas the night before. And then I look at the roster he put on the ice. I mean, you had Phil Kessel out there, who's a veteran, tired guy, most likely injured, who looked terrible in that St. Louis game. And you had Christian Fischer out there, who's a big-body, physical guy who played the night before. And then in the press box, you have Vinny Hinostroza and Michael Grabner, two guys known for their speed, two guys who could put pucks in the net, and two guys and Grabner, who didn't even play the night before in Dallas. And Hinostroza, his game is only about speed. So, I mean, if Hinostroza is going to come into that St. Louis game with speed as opposed to Fischer, who's going to use his body more than his speed on a back-to-back game. So that scratched my head. I'm like, you know the team had a hard game the night before. You knew they'd lack some juice, but you don't make the adjustments to counteract that problem. I mean, obviously he can't scratch Phil Kessel because of this Iron Man streak, but I mean, we're talking about the playoffs, or we're talking about a first-place division team losing their playoff spots, 4 playoff spots below them. They lost their second-place spot, their third-place spot, and both wildcard spots, and you're not going to take a gamble and scratch Phil Kessel because people are going to say mean words to you on the internet, or you have too much respect for Phil. But I mean, you got to look Phil in the eyes and be like, hey, this is a dire situation. We're desperate. I need some speed in this lineup. You're a veteran. You looked tired. We had a lot of travel the previous week in the Eastern Conference. You have to make those moves to save your job, and he didn't. And that's what ticked me off. His system preaches defense. Over the past 3 seasons, that's all they've done is defense, defense, and defense. Last year, they were tops in the league in goals against per game. This year, they have even less goals against per game, so they're even better than last year. But their goals for has always been around the 2.5 mark. His first season was 2.57. And then last season, like I said, 2.55. This year, 2.69. So goal scoring has always been the least of Tocchet's priorities when coaching this Arizona Coyotes team. But in previous seasons, I was fine with that because I knew the roster wasn't up to snuff, wasn't up to speed to outscore opponents. So I love defensive hockey. I mean, that's why I became a Coyotes fan. I love, even the Dave Tippett era, it was defense first, and I appreciate that. But when John Chayka gives you a Taylor Hall and Phil Kessel and a healthy Nick Schmaltz, you got to change your ways. You got to increase that goals for per game by more than 0.14 percentage points. You got to increase that by like half a goal per game, at least half a goal per game. That number should be hitting 3 or nearing 3, and it's nowhere near 3. And it's inexcusable at this point. It seems like the players are paralyzed to make decisions. I got the hockey guy playing behind me. Go watch him more than watch me. But yeah, I feel like the players are paralyzed. The offensive skilled players like Keller, Schmaltz, Kessel, or Hinostroza, sometimes Barrett Hayden, they're paralyzed offensively because they're too focused on the defensive side of the game. They're not allowed to breathe. They're not allowed to save their energy for those high offensive zone plays. And I think that's what's really the problem is they pay too much attention to the defensive side of the game, and then when they get a chance, a high-scoring chance, they can't put the puck in the net. And I don't have mathematical stats to prove that, but their high-danger chances are there. Last season, it was 49% So in a game, they had 49% of the high danger chances. This year, they're at 51.2%, so they got more than their opposing teams in terms of high danger chances, but they only convert on 12% of those high danger chances. Last year was down to 8%. So they don't capitalize on their high danger chances, and this is all 5-on-5. They're a bad 5-on-5 team, I know, in terms of scoring. And you might be asking yourself, well, how does that compare to other teams? Well, Vegas has 56% of the high danger chances in their games and convert 13%. So 13% compared to the Coyotes' 12%, you probably say, they're comparable. But the Vegas power play is 21%. So that's a good power play, where the Coyotes are stuck at 19%, below league average. Then you look at Vancouver. They have 50% of the high danger chances and only convert on 10% of those 5-on-5 high danger chances. So they're even worse than the Coyotes 5-on-5 in terms of creating chances and converting. But then they have a 25% power play. So that's where they overcome that 5-on-5 hurdle. But the Coyotes are just bad 5-on-5, and their power play isn't clicking at a rate to solve those 5-on-5 scoring issues. And then you look at the best team in the league, the Tampa Bay Lightning, have 60% of the high danger scoring chances in a game and convert on 16% of them with a 23% power play. That is an elite team. That is a best team in the league stat. They create high danger chances. They convert on them a lot. This is all 5-on-5. And to boot, they got a 23% power play. I mean, it's right there. And for another comparable, Edmonton 5-on-5 produced the same amount as the Coyotes from last season. So they're at 48% of high danger chances created and only convert on 13% of them. So sort of worse than the Coyotes. They convert more at 13%, but they don't create as much as the Coyotes. But they have the best power play in the league at 29%, and that's how they solve that issue. And of course, you got McDavid and Draisaitl, two of the best players in the league, and that's where the Coyotes fall. I mean, their power play isn't good, so they got to change their power play coach for next season. They can't score 5-on-5. This is the third season in a row where they can't score 5-on-5. So next season, I mean, I would give Tocchet 10 to 20 games. If it's the same problems and the same glaring issue, you got to let him go. And it's his last year of the contract. So I know general managers don't like coaches on expiring contracts coaching their team, because players could just be like, this guy's gone next season, we don't have to try. You got to have a coach in there that the players know they'll never get away from, and they can't just wait him out. So coaches usually get extensions in their last year of their contract, or they're fired. That's why coaches are rotated so often. And with offensively minded coaches, sitting on the bench with Gerard Gallant, Peter Laviolette, Bruce Boudreau, these are some high-end coaches that have coached offensively talented teams that could really help the Coyotes, and it's a decision Chaika has to make. I mean, it's a decision that has to be made. Chaika has made unbelievable roster moves to give Rick Tocchet a roster that should be a perennial regular season victor. They should be running away with the division title. They got Taylor Hall and Phil Kessel, Keller, and Schmaltz. You got Connor Garland, who leads the team with 22 goals. Christian Dvorak's coming into his own. You got four lines who could score. You got some of the best defense in the league, some of the best goaltenders in the league, and they just can't score. That is a coaching problem. Chaika's got every position of this team way above league average, and they're not going to make the playoffs. Just unheard of. I don't know, last year the goal scoring players on the team were Galchenyuk, Brad Richardson, and Vinny Hinostroza. This year Richardson has 6 goals compared to 19 last year. Hinostroza has 5 compared to 16 last year. So those are two players that haven't put their best foot forward, but I don't expect Richardson to be a goal scorer. I know last season was a fluke. But Hinostroza, in a contract year, you got to score way more goals than that. And I'm not putting all the blame on him. I'm just pointing out some areas with the team to not put all the blame on Tocchet, but find some other reasons. Like Hinostroza should have took a step forward this year, just like Dvorak and Garland did, and even Krause. But Hinostroza took a foot back. Galchenyuk was replaced with Kessel. Kessel has 13 goals compared to Galchenyuk's 19 goals. I mean, I made a video even before Kessel was on the team that they shouldn't have gotten Kessel due to numerous reasons. You could watch that video on my channel. But I don't want Galchenyuk on this team. I would probably make that trade 10 out of 10 times. Just Galchenyuk for Kessel. It's kind of a wash of a trade. Galchenyuk's not really lighting the world on fire at all, and he got traded to boot. But this year you got Garland with 22 goals leading the team. Dvorak with 18. Loving Dvorak's game. Taylor Hall has made Garland and Dvorak way better players, and Taylor Hall has been amazing for this team. Let's get the record straight. I never hated on Taylor Hall this video. Taylor Hall came in, did his job, made everyone on his line way better. It's just the other three lines have not produced, and Clayton Keller rounds out the top three goal scorers with 15 goals. Now think about it. Think of Clayton Keller. When has he scored? Before Saturday, he scored 2 goals Saturday, but wasn't he on like a drought? Yeah, he scores like once every 15 games. I mean, Clayton Keller barely scores goals, and he's third on the team in goals. So that's another issue. I expected Keller to take a step forward. He's basically been doing lateral footsteps after his rookie season. Nick Schmaltz only has 8 goals, but he's a point leader. He gets those assists. Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller in this new year have really dropped the ball. They're supposed to be providing secondary scoring, and they haven't. Soderberg and Krause have basically taken that, secondary scoring mantle, and the primary scoring has been Dvorak, Garland, and Hall, and after that it's Krause and Soderberg. So I mean, there's a lot of problems. Rick Tocchet is a defensively minded coach. Look at this stat. Every game I watch, it's always a 1-goal game. 70% of their games have been 1 or 2 goal differential games. Like 70% of their games are tight, checking, just tight games where anything could go. And that's the most frustrating part about watching Coyotes. It's like every game they have a chance to win because the games are so close. It's 1 or 2 goal games. 70% chance it's going to be a 1 or 2 goal game. And if you have a good power play, those games turn into more wins than losses, but they don't have a good power play. They don't have the scoring. Like, they're just right there. They play every game tight. They're close in every game. They just need that 1 goal to shift the momentum or to tie the game or to go ahead or to get some insurance, and it just doesn't happen. And 10 of their last 11 games, so like 95% of their games recently have been 1 or 2 goal games. 10 of their last 11, 1 or 2 goal games. You score a power play goal, you win, or you at least get points. And we're at the time of the season where all you need is to accumulate points, and they're just dropping regulation loss after regulation loss. The moral victories are exhausting. You can't lose back-to-back in regulation. You can't go on an Eastern road trip and win one of them. You can't. And you can't lose to an Eastern Conference team coming into your own barn on their last game of their road trip. I'm talking about the Florida Panthers. You can't lose a game like that in regulation. Full stop. At the end of February in a playoff race, you just can't do it. So that's all I have to say. It's a lot to say. Obviously, Tocchet can't get fired this season. The season's over, which I know that. I'm not saying for him to get fired, but this offseason, Chaika has to look at the coaches first before tweaking the roster. Obviously, his first priority is to re-sign Taylor Hall. I hope he does. I hope he finds a way. That Kessel trade, probably a mistake. Maybe he'll have to move people. Talking about the trade deadline, I'm happy Chaika didn't do anything. Maybe he could have moved Grabner. I'm surprised no one wanted Michael Grabner. That's $3 million, say, in the press box. So that could have helped his cap relief going into the offseason. But, Grabner stays. Maybe Tocchet could play Grabner. That's more speed. Grabner scores goals. And maybe he could help. But, that's it. I think the roster is fine. Roster's fine. I'm not complaining about the roster at all. I know there's some players that need to be more consistent and be more hungry for the net. Clayton Keller, Schmaltz. That's it. If Keller and Schmaltz just had a good January and February, this team would be in the playoffs too. So there is some blame to pass around, but when you're 1-9-1 in your last 11 road games, it's not going to cut it. So that's it for me. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I just feel like the whole vibe around the Coyotes nowadays is kind of gloomy, and there's a lot of reason for that. So just want to get my thoughts out there. I was quiet for the past week. Really didn't like that St. Louis game. It was pathetic and embarrassing, but a good bounce back against Tampa, and then they dropped the ball again in Florida. And they don't play for a while. They don't play until Saturday. And then so their games are more sparse, they're more idle, and then the teams catching them are just going to blow it away because they're good teams. Winnipeg, Nashville, Calgary, everyone had those teams in their top 3 of their division in the offseason, so expect them to pick up points and wins and just beat out the Coyotes for a playoff spot. So that's it for me. It's a long video. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your